It really does seem like Disney and Lucasfilm have had a tough time trying to get the Rey Star Wars trilogy off the ground. Even though they have a director set to attach to it, even though she's not necessarily experienced in this type of filmmaking, still they have a director attached to it. But they can't seem to hold on to writers, or at least they can't get a script in order, because every time they bring in a new writer, there's always disagreements between the writer and the executives over at the studio, mainly Kathleen Kennedy, on the direction that they want to take the project, which is kind of unfortunate for Disney and Lucasfilm because they also perceive Rey to be the future of the franchise, which is remarkable that they actually consider her a mainstay for it, considering a lot of fans of Star Wars, even people who actually like the sequel trilogy, still don't really care for her as a character because she's just kind of a bland Mary Sue. But right now it's looking like that maybe they understand that she's not as popular or as bankable of a character as they once thought. And that's why, according to these latest rumors, they're actually talking about bringing John Boyega back as Finn for the Rey Star Wars trilogy. Rumor Star Wars may bring back another main sequel trilogy character, so I've already spoiled that. That's John Boyega as Rey. Not sure why they're bearing the lead here, but whatever, it is what it is. Let's continue though. Reputable scooper Daniel Reichman reports that Disney and Lucasfilm want John Boyega back in the Star Wars franchise. For Boyega portrayed Finn, a former First Order Stormtrooper who left. Okay, so we already know about all that if you've seen the movies. Details on what Lucasfilm and Disney want to do with Boyega's Finn next were not clarified, so it's unknown if they want the character to return for one of Ridley's new Rey movies or if they want to give him a solo spin-off. I'm thinking if they are going to bring him back, it probably would be in a supporting role in the Rey movie, but if they do bring him back, because John Boyega has voiced in the past that he's kind of unhappy with the way they treated his character, or at least there was some interesting setup in The Force Awakens for his character. I think he probably should have been a Jedi in that, but they wanted to make Rey the Jedi, which, okay, it's fine. They can do that. I didn't like the way they handled it, though. I think they could have handled Rey's journey better. But after that, it seemed like when it came to Finn, he was just kind of relegated to a background character that they didn't know what to do with. And by the third movie in the trilogy, he really was just kind of a secondary character whose sole purpose was just to kind of run around and scream Rey or something like that. But would Boyega agree to return as Finn? Many fans felt that Star Wars sequel trilogy didn't do Finn justice when Finn was introduced to audiences in Star Wars The Force Awakens. He had a compelling backstory as a former stormtrooper who is disturbed by the First Order's evil actions and effects to the Resistance. And one thing you're kind of seeing this historical revisionism online when it comes to the character of Finn, particularly following the Acolyte failing. A lot of people were saying like, oh yeah, there was racism in the Star Wars fan base because look at how people treated Finn. No, actually fans pretty much like Finn. A lot of people who are criticizing Acolyte actually like the character of Finn. A lot of the criticism surrounding his character is that they didn't do his character any justice. But it's kind of funny. They're just trying to come up with new ways to attack the fan base for Star Wars, and by basically outright lying about how they treated Finn. One thing that I think is kind of interesting that Disney doesn't like to acknowledge is the fact that they tried to downplay his involvement and even going so far as to shrink him on the Chinese release of the poster because they didn't want to upset the CCP because they don't really have look too fondly at black people. The sequel trilogy even hinted at Finn's potential to become a Jedi by demonstrating his skill with a lightsaber and insinuating that he was force sensitive. Unfortunately, Star Wars sequel trilogy writers and director J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson did not explore these potential storylines in any details. I would say J.J. Abrams kind of set that in motion, but the problem with J.J. Abrams is he only knows how to basically set stuff up. He doesn't know how to follow through with it. And Rian Johnson, all he really wanted to do was basically subvert expectations. So there was something set up with Finn, so he decided to ignore that, and that was his big contribution to the Star Wars franchise, which is probably why he hasn't gotten his Star Wars trilogy yet. Even though it was previously announced, they don't seem to want to work with him again, and I kind of wonder why, huh? While Star Wars The Last Jedi gave Finn a solo storyline, it was largely separate from other sequel trilogy heroes, Rey and Poe. By the time Finn returned for The Rise of Skywalker, many fans believed he was relegated to a side character whose only interest was Rey. Yep, that's because that's all they really used him for. Even Boyega said the Star Wars sequel trilogy failed Finn, arguing his character was not nearly as developed as the others, and that is true. After publicly criticizing Lucasfilm for the handling of his character, Boyega and Disney met to discuss the matters. While he has seemingly made peace with the ups and downs of his Star Wars experience, as recently as last year, Boyega said he's content leaving Finn's story where it left off in The Rise of Skywalker. And this isn't a knock at John Boyega or anything like that, but he hasn't really done a whole lot of big projects since he left Star Wars. So I can see how in the past he wasn't really happy with how they treated the character and he was wanting to be done with it. But if they were willing to offer him a role and probably a good payday for it, I can see him being like, you know what, whatever, a job's a job sort of thing. And I think Daisy Ridley's kind of doing the same thing because she really hasn't done a whole lot since then. And that's really the only thing that she's known for. So I can see why she's returning as Rey, getting a lot of money for doing that. And I can't begrudge the actors for taking a job because Disney seems to give them a dump truck full of money in order to do that sort of thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if John Boyega did return with this, but he probably would have some caveats saying that they have to do something with his character, treat his character right. And this could be a big reason why there's been issues with getting this off the ground because they don't necessarily know if he's going to be involved or not. After the last writer left the project, maybe when the next one comes in, that's some of the talk that they're going to do is like, okay, let's see if we can get John Boyega involved with it. Because as of right now, we haven't heard, I don't think there's been confirmation on who the next writer is for it. The closest that we have is this other news that came out of Deadline about a Star Wars trilogy being written by Simon Kinberg. And looking at his body of work, he seems like he could be a good fit for writing this sort of thing, or at least he has a habit of, he's written some bad movies, but also some decent ones. So you have to kind of, I'm not saying pick and choose or take with a pinch of salt, just kind of be cautious. Maybe that's the right word for it, that be cautious about Simon Kinberg's involvement. But again, we don't know if this new trilogy that they're talking about having him write is the Rey Star Wars movies. It's possible that's the case right now, or it could be a separate one entirely. One thing is for sure, though, it does talk about in this article that it would be a movie that basically, or his trilogy that he's going to be writing is episodes 10, 11, and 12. So presumably that should have been the Rey movies because hers was supposed to be a direct sequels to the previous movies. So if he's supposed to be writing 10, 11, and 12, and the Rey movies are supposed to be the follow-up to the last trilogy that we got, then it seems like Simon Kinberg is the new writer for this, but we just don't have confirmation on that at this time. But one thing is for sure, and this is something that came out recently, those in the media are actually getting kind of tired of the fact that Disney keeps announcing a lot of these Star Wars projects and doesn't actually follow through with them. I've even talked about that in the past where they have a habit of actually, I think they've even announced more projects, whether movies or TV shows, than they've actually completed. So that's not a good sign for them because it really does seem like they don't know what they're doing. And I think there's a lot of other insider information coming out of Disney and Lucasfilm that they're kind of left scrambling to try to figure out what they're doing, because whenever they release something, presumably it's because they believe it's going to be something successful, like The Acolyte, for instance. They spent so much money on that. You would almost imagine that they felt that that was a sure thing. And it come to find out it was just a disastrous failure for them. They have The Mandalorian and Grogu, I believe, set to come out next year or the year after that. But that's going to be their next theatrical release. And I guess we'll have to see what happens with that, because The Mandalorian was previously popular, at least for the first 2 seasons. So if the first 2 seasons were popular with fans and it fails at the box office because season 3 of it wasn't that good, well, then that just goes to show you Star Wars as we currently know it is pretty much a dead brand. But I think most people are willing to accept that Star Wars just isn't what it used to be. Anytime they announce a movie or a TV show, it's not met with the excitement. At best, a lot of people, I think, have, or at least the majority of the audience have, maybe a cautious optimism for it. There's still going to be those Disney Star Wars fans who are going to be excited no matter what it is, as long as it says Star Wars. I mean, they could literally just take a crap on the screen and say it's Star Wars, and there's going to be people out there who praise it as stunning and brave or whatever they want to do. I think general audiences, though, need to be won back to the Star Wars genre, and bringing Finn back into a Rey movie, I don't think that's going to necessarily do the job. If they do try to bring him back, though, and maybe treat his character properly, then it does kind of extend some effort on their part, because it shows that they have listened to some of the criticism that they've gotten and they're willing to change course on that. But with many things Star Wars related, I would say that's kind of too little too late at this point, or at least it's one gesture and the first step of many gestures that they have to make towards the fans in order to try to win people back. So even if the Finn is brought back, they treat his character right in the Rey movie. If by, I don't know, some miracle, it's actually a decent movie, I don't think that's going to be enough to bring Star Wars back to how it was. I think they would have to have a series of successes in order to bring people back. And I think the only way they can probably do that at this time is if they just kind of canceled stuff and just waited for some time before they brought back Star Wars and made it something special again, as opposed to just something that we hear 10 announcements each year and then maybe one thing actually is produced as a result of all this. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Do you think they'll bring John Boyega back? Do you think he would even want to come back after the way they treated him? Or do you think these are just rumors? Comment below, let me know. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to click that like button and share this video out there, because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.